One of the most famous philosophers of our time, Sir Cortlandt D. Sutton, once said, "Burn the boats because nobody is coming to help us," and that is certainly the truth. The Denver Broncos are 0-2, heading out on a very tough East Coast road trip where they go all the way, like as far east as you can possibly go, to 11 o'clock games. And in addition to that, get news that Mike McGlinchey is out at least the next month, probably because of when that game with the Saints falls, probably missing the next 5 games. So the Denver Broncos, they have some serious holes and some things they need to fix, which is why the free agent signing that we made today and the roster moves we made are very, very puzzling. We're going to break that down. We get some encouraging news about Bo Nix. We get some bad news about Cortland Sutton. And I think I finally figured out why the national mainstream media is so negative and why even local national Denver Broncos media is really so negative about these Denver Broncos. Let's dive in. So no help is coming. Like Cortland Sutton said, burn the boats. Nobody's coming to help us. There are only 4 teams in the entire National Football League who have a tougher strength of schedule than us coming up. And you just look here with this road trip coming up all the way East Coast, 11 o'clock. That is an area we have struggled in the past. It was last year that we went to an 11 o'clock game out in Florida and the wheels fell off of this car. And that's when a lot of people jumped off the Broncos bandwagon. They redeemed this season. I think Cortland Sutton, Sean Payton this offseason went and studied from Sean McVay, studied with Kyle Shanahan about like what tips do you have. It was his first time being in the AFC West and dealing with that East Coast travel. He talked about at the end of the season how he was so used to hard games coming out west and the time zone change happening the other way. And so I'm hoping that he has learned from those West Coast teams, learning how to go east and be successful. But really, they have all come out and told us how crucial these next 2 games are going to be, that if we do not find a way to win one of these next 2 games, you can basically kiss the playoffs goodbye, and that changes everything about the Denver Broncos. So losing your future or your current right tackle, who I know a lot of us in Broncos country dogged on for some time. There were some people who called him Mike McGlinchey because he had issues with penalties, but I'd been extremely impressed with him and felt like he was starting to hit his groove. The fact that he held up against TJ Watt, like TJ as the best player on that defense got to pick, like, am I going to go on the left side and go against Bowles or the right side against McGlinchey? And he lined up a lot against McGlinchey, and he only let up 1 sack on one of the best pass rushers in the league. So I was impressed with him. And so now it's looking like that's going to be Alex Palchevsky's spot. So you would think that the Broncos, like, hey, if we were going to make a roster move, let's go out and trade or sign a tackle who can play that position. Well, they did not. Instead, they added to what I think is the biggest strength on this team that we've talked about all year long, which is our platoon of outside edge rushers. We saw week 1, Jonathan Cooper just pop off, being in the backfield the whole time, the highest rated player on Pro Football Focus. We then saw this week Zach Allen in the middle pop off, and he's like one of the top rated interior rushers. So I feel really, really good about our outside edge rush. And yet we went out and we signed Alex Farmer. Or Andrew Farmer. I was thinking Alex Farmer from the NBA, but we signed him. He played with the Chargers for a long time. He was an undrafted free agent from a D2 school in Tennessee, and he did get on 60 plays last year on the Chargers, and most of those were special team snaps. They really think that he can make a difference in this edge rush. And I found this really interesting because it's like Jonah Elliss has shown incredible flashes. We went out and got that guy from the UFL, Dondrea Tillman, and I just feel like this is not an area of concern. But then what we see is all of these reporters talking a lot about Baron Browning and the fact that he went and had an MRI yesterday, and that we're still waiting to hear that. But the fact that the Broncos went out and signed another outside edge rusher when that already is a position of strength, when Drew Sanders is hopefully going to be able to return here, around probably week like 13-ish, right before our bye week there, it made me very, very concerned about Baron Browning, because Baron Browning is on a contract year, and I feel like he and Cooper together are almost unblockable. I thought, man, there's no way with both of those dudes that we don't end up with a 10-sack dude this year. And now you really could see a world where that group that I thought was our deepest position, we're now down to just needing to go out and get somebody off of the free agent pile, which is going to make a move here because we are over on practice squad players. So we will need to see the Broncos go out and cut somebody who's on the practice squad. We already know we use that practice squad as a way of hiding players who are going to get a lot of snaps. Little Jordan Humphreys, who played a ton on Sunday, caught a bunch of balls, had a lot of yards after the catch, is a practice squad player technically, although Sean Payton views him as a actual starter on this team. So there are a couple things like we could move McGlinchey onto the IR, which is a 4-week designation. So that would truly be a sign that he is going to be out until all the way to that New Orleans Saints game. Are there other players on that practice squad we tried to cut, and then once you cut them, they can go through waivers and get claimed somewhere else? Although actually, if they're on our practice squad, they can be signed if they're going to be moved directly to another team's active roster. So very interesting there. Let me know what you think in the comments about going out and getting him. Does that make you excited or not excited? Next thing, speaking of not excited, we just got a week 2 breakdown of the most efficient wide receivers and the least efficient wide receivers. So you want to be at the top right. So the left side of your graph, your y-axis, I believe, is what your quarterback rating was when they were targeting you. And then the bottom here, your x-axis, man, I hope I got that right. If not, roast me. I went to school in Adams 12, Thornton High School right there. This is how many yards you ran your routes at typically. So if you're down here, it means that like your quarterback did not have a good quarterback rating when he was targeting you. And if you're up here, it means that it had a great one, and this is like how far you're running. So very interesting here that we see Chris Godwin. Oof, we got to play him on Sunday, so that's not super fun that he's at the top right, knowing they also have Mike Evans. They got some real talent there. The very disappointing thing here for the Denver Broncos is that I'm literally trying to zoom out of my browser to get far enough down to show you where Courtland Sutton is. Courtland Sutton is the absolute worst spot you could be on this graph, in that he is 1 yard per route, and that the quarterback passer rating when he's being targeted is 30, like right at 30. So that's just not a good sign for Courtland Sutton. I really think we need to find a way to get him the ball in the types of routes that he succeeds in and has succeeded in historically. Interesting to see Lil Jordan Humphreys in a place that we'd like to see him. And then obviously seeing that what I think we all see in real life, which is Josh Reynolds has been a absolute steal. And just seeing that, man, to be able to swap him for Jerry Jeudy, which is essentially what we did. He is outshining Jerry Jeudy, obviously, who's right here, and not bringing half of the drama with it. So that was definitely an upgrade for us to have that right there. Now here, this definitely is going to relate. So someone came out and did a breakdown of how many times different teams faced a loaded box against them. And what they saw is that the Denver Broncos were one of the highest teams that the defense to stop them just loads the box. And we all watching games could say it. That's why our running game isn't working. That's why Bo Nix has no time. And we're trying to beat loaded boxes by just throwing short of the sticks little dump offs. And what's really interesting is that the team that actually saw loaded boxes the most is actually the most explosive team in football. At least, through 2 games, watching them just destroy the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday. And they had a stack box 41% of the time, where we only had it 36% of the time. And what they were doing to combat a loaded box was to do play action, because that gives your receivers time enough, because the play action sucks in linebackers, that you have time enough to have a receiver get behind the loaded box, right? We're throwing everything into the loaded box, and Bo Nix doesn't have time. When he's just doing a quick drop back, he doesn't have time to have a receiver get out of the loaded box, and a play action is a great way to do that. And what we're seeing here is that the Denver Broncos only ran play action 13% of the time. And what is absolutely wild about that Pittsburgh game to me is that I was expecting innovative play calls, and I dogged on the Atlanta Falcons, because the week before, when the Atlanta Falcons played against the Steelers were able to tell, because every single time they were in pistol, they ran the ball out of pistol 80-something% of the time. So the Steelers knew when the Atlanta Falcons are in pistol, they're going to run the ball. Well, the Broncos did the exact same thing on Sunday, where when we were under gun, when we were under center, we ran the ball 83% of the time, and when we were in shotgun, we threw 83% of the time. And so Sean Payton. I don't know if this is Bo Nix doesn't have the footwork to run play action yet. There are a lot of pundits on Twitter who talk about Bo Nix not being able to roll left on a play action because of his sloppy footwork. So that might be it, but let's clean that up, because this is the solution to how you go about beating a loaded box, is you have got to have some play action passing. And I think this right here is a statistic that I hope Sean is looking at very, very heavily as we go into next week, because really I think it is a lack of it is an overcomplication of this offense that has us where we're at right now. Let's simplify this down for a rookie quarterback, and let's let him go out there and cook. Couple interesting things here that I also want to make sure I got through here, that as we are dogging on Bo Nix and the lack of production that he's put up, and like he hasn't thrown a touchdown yet, I think it's also an interesting thing to just look at the fact that defenses across the league are drastically outpacing offenses right now, to the point where there are a lot of people who think there will be major changes that give the offense, again, the advantage. That's the history of the NFL, is that defenses catch up. People like watching, and TV ratings go up when there's more points scored. And so the defenses catch up and figure it out, and then the NFL makes a rule change like, oh, you can't do this anymore, and it gets a little easier for offenses. And so that's going to happen. But if you look here and just look at like 2019 through 2 weeks, there were 105 passing touchdowns. You look at 2020 and 2022 or 2021, like around those COVID years, you had 110 touchdown passes in the first 2 weeks. And you're looking at, in 2024, you only have 66 touchdown passes through 2 weeks, 33 a week, basically, which is absolutely wild to me and makes me feel a little more encouraged about Bo Nix not throwing one yet. Obviously, looking at, there's, what was this? I think it was Nate Jackson came out and said, if you take a look at the record of the top 5 NFL passing offenses, they're 3-7, but the top 5 running offenses are 7-3. And so defensives have caught up. The only way to win football in the future is to be a running team. And we have not been able to run the ball yet. And I think there is a push and pull there that you need to be able to do both. But let's get our running game cooking this week by being under center more and throwing in the play action pass so that our running game opens up. Last thing here is that I think I figured out why a lot of local media is so negative about this Denver Broncos team, is that when you go into the season with a pessimistic view and with like we're going to be horrible view, if you're wrong, nobody ever like calls you on it. And then you can like double down and be like, see, I told you so. And what I'm feeling real heavy here is because like I was incredibly hyped about this Broncos season. I still have not given up on it and still have like this sneaky suspicion we're going to make the playoffs and shock the world like we did last year. Shocking the world. We didn't make the playoffs last year. But I think it's just a lot easier to not get burned if you don't have high expectations. But if you are a diehard Denver Broncos fan, I'm telling you, it is going to feel so much better when we make the playoffs. Not if you were pessimistic and doubting this team, because like then you aren't really a fan. You've like jumped off. But if you're like, hey, I believe we're going to do it, it's going to feel so much better to be like, see, I told you so. So let's all keep hoping for that. And my kids moved the balls again, but we still have a ton to believe in.